So it is my pleasure as President of EURBICA to welcome you all for this first in a series of lectures. When we held the meeting of the annual general meeting of the association in Rome last year, we did ask for feedback about what members would love to see happening through EURBICA channels. And there was agreement that members wanted more interaction, wanted more events where they can participate. So we've been working from that time till now on refining our mailing list. EURBICA is one of the largest groupings within ICA, numbering on paper to around 900 members. So we've just finished a process whereby we went through all our contacts and we have just updated those. And also we decided to embark on these lectures. So this is the first one. We intend to hold a second one in mid-July and also a third one around beginning of September. The scope is to inform members and communicate members, not simply inform, but even enter into a dialogue and discussion about projects that are of interest to the archival community, with a main emphasis on Europe, which is at the end of the day the scope of EURBICA. Today's topic is the European Digital Treasures, an EU-funded project which has managed to bring a number of archival stakeholders together and also has been extremely successful in terms of getting the funding and also delivering on all the deliverables that the project requires. And the scope of this presentation is to disseminate findings and also make members of the public aware, those who are not yet aware of this project, about the outcomes of this project and also the valuable merchandise and tools that came out of this project. As speaker today, we have the honor to have with us Dr. Karl-Heinz, who is co-founder and general manager of Icarus. Icarus was one of the partners in this consortium of the project. So Karl is an excellent speaker in terms of explaining to us the value and outcomes of this project. For those of you who might have questions, you can interact with us in two ways. Either use the Q&A function that you'll find at the bottom of the screen of your Zoom application, and you can put questions over there, or you can even take note and we'll have some time at the end of the session where you can then directly ask the questions. So I'll leave it up to Karl now to deliver his presentation.
Thank you very much, Charles. My dear ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can hear me properly. Welcome. I'm very happy that you joined this lecture in such a big number. And I'm very thankful that I've got this forum of the lecture series of EURBICA to present the results and the activities we dealt with the last 4 years. So first, I want to share my screen in order to start the presentation. So I hope you can see the starting slide. So I try in the next 40-45 minutes to give an overview about the results, the procedure of the European Digital Treasures project, a kind of project summary and a kind of workshop inside also. So let's start with right at the beginning. As Charles already mentioned, this EDT project is part of the Creative Europe program of the European Commission, and well, it get us busy for more than 4 years, from the very end of 2018 till the end of the year of 2022. So altogether, we had a total project budget of 3 million euros and about 50% of funding rate. That means the other 50% the participants had to cover themselves. So the partners who were involved in this project, I want to start with the lead partner, the Spanish State Archive, who were in charge of the application, did an excellent job. I have to mention on right at the beginning. And beside the Spanish State Archives, other state and national archives participated also, namely National Archives of Hungary, of Portugal, of Malta, of Norway, and from the technological side, NTU, the Munster Technology University in Cork, Ireland, and finally, as Charles already mentioned, Icarus, as you prefer, the International Center for Archival Research. That means a cooperation of approximately 180 European or transatlantic archives or archival institutions. So what were the main objectives of this project? First of all, to enlarge the visibility of archives and stress the competency of archives as guardians and preservers of the cultural and historical heritage of Europe, to lay this knowledge and this conscience in the conscience of a broader public in Europe. Secondly, we tried to develop new ideas regarding business models for archives or cultural institutions worth to be practiced in the 21st century. And on the other hand, we tried to reach and get in touch with new audiences. Concretely, we speak about the youngsters, they call them the Generation Z, 15 to 18 years old, young people, and we call them Silver Generation, the Generation 60 plus. And last but not least, which is quite important in almost all of the European Union founded projects, the supporting of transnational mobility of experts of any kind, of historians, archivists, designers, filmmakers, and so on, and to foster the transsectoral exchange and so be able to create new and innovative results. So these were the major objectives, and on the base of this, the project was structured in work groups as usual. Work group 1 dealt with the new business models for European archives. Work package 2 as the stories of history, which is mainly meant by creating conscience for the European heritage, storing the archives. Package 3 was the work with the new target audiences, and finally communication and dissemination to publish the results on one hand, but also realize own project parts within this the bigger project. So altogether, not less than 27 activities have been carried through. Don't worry, I won't get into each of them, but the most important I want to get you familiar with. So I want to start with work package 2, the stories of history. That's mainly consisted of the production and conception of 3 transmedia exhibitions, 2 dealing with special topics. So exhibition 1 was the construction of Europe, history, memory, and myth of Europeanness over 1,000 years, was curated by the National Archive of Hungary and supported by the National Archive of Malta. And in order to structure this quite big topic, we split the whole question in 4 pillars: the spirit of Europe, the diversity of Europe, the multiple faces of Christianity, and the heritage of Enlightenment. Exhibition number 2 was dealing with exiles, migratory flows, and solidarity, a timeless topic, as the exhibition showed, done mainly by the National Archive of Norway, assisted by Icarus. Here again, we split up into work-related migration, war-related migration, and migration caused by political uprising, turmoil, and persecution. And last but not least, the third section, third exhibition, dealt with European discoveries from the New World to new technologies, done by the National Archive of Spain and the State of Portugal, excuse me, and the State Archive of Spain. And here we focused our energy on the fields of medicine, of energy and industry, and transports and navigation. So it was quite a big challenge to cover these very huge questions. It was the first step to select approximately 140 documents from, as we finally saw, about 46 archival organizations from 12 countries. From these documents, we prepared the exhibitions with exhibition texts, with catalogs, and translated them into 7 languages. That means English, Spanish, Portuguese, Maltese, Norwegian, Hungarian, German. That means to cover the audience of all the participating countries. And as this was a transmedia exhibition or transmedia exhibitions, we had to prepare, namely MTU, Munster Technology University in Cork, was mainly responsible for this. We created a lot of transmedia features, video games for intelligent gamification, created an edutainment app, several panels were enlarged and emanated by augmented reality, and yeah, this also in several languages. I just want to give you some examples of the sources we selected for these exhibitions. One per pillar, just to give you an overview about the broadness and the richness of contents the archives keep and have to offer and share to the audience. So the first exhibition, Construction of Europe, I want to introduce this document firstly, requests for supplies of ingredients for alchemical laboratory of Emperor Rudolf III, offered by the National Archives of the Czech Republic. As you can remember, the National Archive of the Czech Republic was not part of the consortium at the beginning, but via Icarus, they could support the project with their sources, with the documents. So I think there were about 11 different archives from 6 countries enlarged the variety of this European project only from the side of Icarus. The diversity of Europe, especially the national diversity, was, for instance, represented by the Pro Finlandia petition from the year 1899, when the time, which was a good example for one of the first examples of civil society, when when representatives of the civil society of whole Europe, all countries of Europe, scientists, poets, romanciers, and so on, collected signatures and expressed their oppositions against the Russification process started at the end of the 19th century in Finland with the aim to erase the national identity of the Finnish people. The third pillar of the first exhibition, so the different faces of Christianity. One very nice example from the National Archive of Portugal, the Vulgata Bible by Saint Jerome, a very attractive piece of art, a very precious example for this. And the heritage of enlightenment is represented by a example from Malta, from the Cathedral Archive of Malta, a Masonic certification, which is a symbol for the integration of the Masonic order in Malta in the 60s of the 18th century. When we switch to the second exhibition, migration, the first pillar was the work-related migration. I want to introduce to you a kind of source which is perhaps not so well known in big parts of Europe. It's called Wanderbuch, a kind of journey diary, as young craftsmen were allowed in former centuries to travel through Europe wherever they want in order to settle down or to stay for some weeks or months and to learn by some masters, and as much as possible, and after some months, years, go back to their home, settle down and do their work. And this was a young gentleman called Jakob Modern, who for 6 years, from 1824 to 29, started with his journey from Pressburg, today Bratislava, Pozsony in Hungarian, to a toolsmith. Here you see his diary with his personal topographical facts. Then, of course, he had to be the masters where he worked have to assure and sign with a stamp that he really was there and worked there. And this is quite amazing how far he got, because he started in Pressburg. The beginning of the journey went to the west, via Munich, southwest Germany, Neu-Ulm, Schaffhausen, crossed the border of Switzerland, Zurich, Winterthur, Lucerne, and on his way back to the north, he went to Leitmeritz, into the Czech Republic, Teplitz, then to Germany, Dresden, and on his way back home to Prague. So it was very extraordinary that a young man on this time could do such a journey within 6 years and stay several weeks or even months with his new masters. Well, another example for the war-related migration is this document given by the Historical Archive of Belgrade, which is also a partner of Icarus. Going back to the end of the 18th century, after the last Habsburg-Ottoman War in 1791, when after the peace treaty, some or several dozens of Serbian families tried to flee or wanted to flee from Serbia, from the Ottoman-ruled area to the Habsburg-ruled area. And here you see a detailed list of the families, of the names of the family chiefs, of their occupation, of their address, and so on. And it gives a very, very good insight of the social structure, demographical structure of this time, of these people. And this makes this piece of document quite valuable, because it's very seldom that you can have such a detailed insight into the more or less private sectors of their lives. That migration caused by turmoil and revolutions did not only affect the lower levels, the peasant levels, workers levels, but the upper class. This is an example. For this example, you can see here, which is a passenger list of a British warship, the Marlborough. After the execution of the Tsar in cause of the Russian Revolution, his broader family was highly endangered, and the British government decided to send the Marlborough to the Black Sea to rescue the rest of the family. And this is the passenger list. Perhaps you see on the top the mother of the dead Tsar, Maria Fedorovna of Russia, the sister of the Tsar, Grand Duchess Xenia, or another family member, Prince Yusupov, who married a niece of the Tsar, and he was responsible for the killing of Rasputin, for instance. You see perhaps the signs near some of the names. Those are the ones who arrived in Malta. So there's a document from Malta, and those whose names are erased, they already left the ship in Istanbul. Well, and we come now to the third exhibition, dealing with inventions and explorations. Well, this is a quite interesting thing. It's a 3D-dimensional document. As you can see, a piece of parchment with examples of bone gelatin for troop ration. It was the gentleman Joseph Louis Proust, a famous chemist end of the 18th century, who was commissioned by the Spanish king to invent something to amend the elementary of his troops without any costs. And so he found out that bone gelatin, which costs not a lot, is quite capable to foster alimentation and of the troops. And he worked at the Academy of Artillery in Segovia in Spain, and he did several experiments: beef cubes, beef bone cubes, joint bone cubes, rib bone cubes, sheep bone cubes, and pork bone cubes, and had an eye on the different effects on the human body when after eating this. So you see, inventions and innovations often got to do also with military. Very interesting example for energy in the industry is a new invention. What you see here, this refrigerator, was a standard in the 20s, which was quite a deadly step because this kind of refrigerators used to explode quite often. And it was one very famous couple, one you know for sure, Mr. Einstein, Albert Einstein, and his colleague, a Hungarian physicist, Leo Szilard, who invented a completely new technology without rotating parts, only based on magnetism to cool down the system. We have here the patent documents from 1929 and the plans for it. Very interesting that these kind of refrigerators never came into being, was never produced. But the technology survived, and we use them till today for cooling down atomic energy plants. So was quite necessary, but the beginning was not for energy plants, but for refrigerators. And last but not least, see this wonderful plan, this map, manuscript atlas of the second part of the 16th century for National Archive of Portugal, which is an example for transportation and navigation, very detailed, as you can see here, very attractive. And if you ask yourself, what about the practicability of these maps? If you have a look on the L group of the Azores and compare it with a modern map, you see they're quite exact. depictions regarding the position and the form of the different islands. Well, this was enough for the exhibitions. We want to make a leap to work practice 1, where we try to create new business models for archives. We started this part of this sector of the project with a survey by identifying already existing business models, which were the quite high backflow from 42 archives from 21 countries. And on the base of these results, we identified 37 already existing good practices in Europe regarding business models. On base of this, we managed to organize 2 workshops, one in September 2021 in Alicante in Spain, about 450 participants, and on the other side in May 2022, a workshop in Paris to the topic New Business and Conceptual Models within the frame of one of the Icarus European meetings. And in order to add some concrete contribution to this topic, we started to get in touch with 12 graphic and industrial designers in 6 different countries and asked them to get inspired by some of the documents that are used in these exhibitions I already introduced, and to create some merchandising products based upon these documents. At least finally we succeeded to create about 50 of them. Just to give you an example, one is this page from a volume from a time when for the first time Europeans get in touch with the wisdom of medicine in Asia, namely in India, with Indian medicine, and the one Portuguese, Gamba Garcia da Horta, who wrote a big volume about the knowledge, Indian knowledge of medicine, and one Portuguese designer was inspired by this and got the idea to create a collection of soaps using the different flavors and ingredients is mentioned in this volume from the 16th century, and also give a kind of abstract and a summary of the main content of this book. Another very interesting example for a merchandising product comes from Romania. The Romanian National Archive owns a volume which can be for sure called a kind of ancestor of modern rocket science. Mr. Konrad Haas, who lived in the 16th century, he for decades wrote a book dealing with rocket science. And what you see here, this is not only text but also drawings, very sophisticated drawings. They seem to be very modern. So he had ideas that really were realized finally only 400 or 500 years later. And it was an idea of an Austrian designer to make a wooden kit in order to build models based upon the drawings of Mr. Haas. Finally, you already know this manuscript atlas. Why not use this attractive model on a scarf to wear it wherever you want? So it's only a small outlet of this, of the main products. So you see the timetable of the exhibitions. So from the middle of 2021 till the late autumn 2022 in all 6 countries, mostly in parallel, this exhibition has been shown, altogether 18. So, and fortunately, we, in spite of the pandemics, we happy to receive and to welcome more than 70,000 persons who visited this 18 exhibition in 6 countries. Well, let's come to the next working group or work package, the new target audiences. As I mentioned, we started with the youngsters, with the Generation Z, so 15 to 18 years old young people. So one idea was to integrate them into archival life and guide them through an archive. And for this purpose, there was the idea to create an archival literacy online course to use in schools for teachers and for pupils in order to make the history lessons more precious or even more colorful. So this literacy online course is separated in 3 modules. In the first modules, the pupils were taught what an archive in general is, how to use it, how to behave in an archive, what one can expect from an archive. So it's the modules are separate or are structured by different sectors and questions and answers, and you have to finish one sector in order to proceed to the next one. In module 2, there's some practical knowledge and know-how how to find relevant data in archives, relevant for the personal history, for families, and so on. And the third module, mainly for teachers, is a summary of or a collection of digital resources for use in history lessons to 3 timeless topics, mainly pandemic and epidemics, economic crisis, and migration. So partly the documents you've already seen in the exhibitions, but enlarged by a lot of others. So a kind of screenshot you can see here. Quite a lot of numbers of experts developed this tool of this online archival literacy online course. Was tested finally by 35 teachers in 5 different countries, and we have had some workshops in order to promote this online course. At present, it exists in English and a Spanish version, and if I'm not mistaken, a Croatian version is about to be prepared. And basically, it's possible to translate the whole system and to adapt it for use in different countries and schools. Another way to approach to the younger generation was to create a youth European archive. The question was that the youngsters were asked to select some of the documents, namely from the sector Construction of Europe, and get inspired by this and create another digital content based on this document. So finally, from 6 countries, young people participated from Norway, Croatia, Spain, Portugal, Hungary, and Malta. And the new digital projects that emerged, there could be a lot of things. It could be poems or songs or sketchbooks, cartoons, whatever. And finally, there was a kind of jury that selected the winners, and the winning projects were invited to join a summer camp in Budapest, organized by the Hungarian National Archive in July 2022. One of the milestones of this summer camp was to create, for instance, a time capsule where the young people could place their ideals, their ideas and ideas about European identity for future generations who once will find this time capsule. So you got an impression of this, of one of the lessons of this summer camp. And here the process of hiding, of burying the time capsule in the courtyard of the National Archive of Hungary, and perhaps in some 100 years they will free it again and find it and get a very authentic message from the past. Another, on the other range of the new audiences, as I mentioned, the older generation, the silver generation, 60 plus. We started this part of the project again, like with the merchandising products, with a survey. So we send out a survey, a questionnaire about expectations, the possibilities, the readiness to collaborate, and we received quite a big number of response, almost 900 from the silver users from 8 countries, and not less than almost 170 of these silver users declared their readiness to participate actively in some crowdsourcing activities, to share the knowledge in capability of reading the old scripts and to contribute to the technical development of handwriting recognition. Because the basic point in this sector was to support handwriting recognition technology, mainly supported by the Universitat Politécnica de Valencia. So the artificially checked or transcribed texts were checked by the silver researchers, and by this way they support the learning process of the software. The general organization of this part of the project was done by the Hungarian National Archive. At the end, I want to stress another very challenging and important part of the project. It was part of the communication dissemination work package, but you can also place it in the new audiences area. We call it Treasures in Archive. We got in touch with filmmakers, and we started a call for audiovisual projects. Again, the directors and filmmakers should be inspired by historical primary sources and create short films, 7 to 15 minutes, whatever will come out, real films or animated films. So there was about 4.5 months the call for these films, and finally we received results from Hungary, Malta, Norway, Portugal, and Spain. In order to bring together cross-sectoral experts, we organized in Cork in Ireland an international encounter where the results were presented for the first time in April 2022. So there were 7 film directors from different European countries, experts from design thinking and storytelling industries, and also experts from the archival side. So the main activities were, of course, the presentation of the films, which were not ready at that time completely, but the first results. And so the question was discussed whether archives should act, or how archives could act as tools and means for inspiration. And there was a design thinking workshop. On the snap you can see the participants on this workshop. So the main purposes, of course, was to assist the film creators to finalize their projects, by enable them to get new inspirations, and to be in general a forum for discussion and development. So just to give an idea about these short films, I won't show the films because it would be quite time consuming, but just to give you two examples. Example one, Think, Play, Dream, from Don Diniz to Zoltán Kodály. This was inspired, this was a Portuguese filmmaker, by two primary sources. One fragment of a medieval love song by Don Diniz from the turn from the 13th to the 14th century. Don Diniz was not only a poet, but also a Portuguese king, and he, in his spare time, wrote love songs, and we fortunately have some fragments. And on the other side, a photo album of Zoltán Kodály, one of the most famous musicians, music theorists, and music teachers from Hungary of the 20th century. And the summary of this film, that the message, so to say, is that music can serve as a bracket of a common Europeism for all regions and times, even when the regions are far away from each other, on very remote areas and far away located areas of Europe. A second example, for instance, a Spanish example, you see this picture of the dismantling of the famous painting of Pablo Picasso, Guernica, dealing with the destruction of the city of Guernica by fascist bombings. And it was it was stated by Picasso already during his lifetime that this painting, which was in New York, should only return to Spain when fascism is overcome and democratic situation was strong enough. And the message of this short film is, of course, that in 1982, when this painting was dismantled and brought back to Spain, this was finally the time when fascism was overcome finally, and democratic situation was in charge again. So I really can recommend to have a look on these films, 7 to 15 minutes. They are all published on the Digital Europe website. So as a summary of the final results, you can state that we had a final conference in Valladolid in Spain in December 2022, where all the results could be the films, the inquiries, the videos, the games, so everything that was produced concretely during the last 4 years have been presented, and all of them are till today accessible on the project website www.digitaltreasures.eu. And which is one of the most important results of this project was that gradually, step by step, a kind of project family emerged. That means we learned from each other. You could imagine that archivists from the different parts of Europe had different approaches, how to deal with the different questions, with the sources. But finally, we came together, we learned mutually from each other, and I think each of us left the project richer than we started. So thank you very much for this attention. This was really a rush through in a nutshell about the achievements of the last 4 years in this context. And I'm very happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carl, for that interesting presentation. Obviously, this is a project which spanned a period. Originally, it was planned to span a period of 3 years, but then because of COVID, it even extended further over a period of 4 years. So what we've heard here was an outline of the targets, the processes, and the main achievements of this process. But all participants know that apart from the achievements that are recorded, there was much more. We know of a lot of volunteers who reached out to the archives due to this project, some of whom are still volunteering with us as National Archives in the various in various countries. And also there was a whole learning experience, especially the richness of the summer school in Budapest, and from the feeling we got from our students, basically, there was a lot of team building, a lot of networking that actually went into the project, which is all beneficial for the archival institutions involved. For those who participated, as you saw from the presentation, we were specifically zooming in on two particular cohorts, so the younger people and the silver generation. But apart from that, definitely there was a lot of learning experience, especially with the online course that is available. And all the tools developed are freely available for anyone who wants to reach them through the website or reach them through contact with the respective partners in the project. So basically, with regards to questions, we started receiving online questions. So basically, one of the questions we have is, it would be interesting to read in detail the 42 responses you surveyed for experiences of valorization of archives, upon which you selected 37. And the question is whether we can read that online, which I doubt. Card.
Yes, I don't think so that they're publicly available. I'm not quite sure what were the preconditions when sending out this questionnaires, whether we got the allowance to publish them or not. So, but I'm not quite sure about this because I was not personally involved in this activity. But of course, I can give the information about this later on if it's interesting. Just write me.
Yes, I think with supplementary information, the target is that we will share this recording, the recording of this presentation, but still feel free to write to anyone from yes, the project, and we will try to give the information, if we can give that information straight away. We have also a question from Estonia. How did you select the 140 records? The process of the selection of the records. This was one of the challenging areas.
Yes, of course. Very big. Hi, Birgit. Yes. This really was one of the big challenges at the beginning, because 140 sounds a lot, but it was only the peak of the iceberg. So we had hundreds of selected documents that might be worth to be selected, but we have to make a final selection. The National Archive of Estonia contributed also some parts, photographs and maps and so on. So it was a kind of, how to say, democratic decision among the consortium of the participating archives and ICARUS, depending also of the availability of digitizations, of high resolution digitizations. So finally we had to fill up the pillars, and it was a decision of majority which to take and which not to take. So it was a positive discussion. It was not really a systematical method to select or not to select, but to get a very broad overview covering the pillars of the exhibitions. and mainly we preferred documents where we had already digital copies of them.
Thanks, Carl. To this question of the selection of documents, I can add also that basically, as you know, all of you who have been involved in exhibitions, it's always challenging to choose a number of documents from the documents that we have. And over here, we had not only the archives participating, which already have millions and kilometers of records to choose from, but also other archives that, although not partners in the project, also submitted some documentation. But this was also linked to the whole team of the project. So apart from the sub-teams of the exhibitions, the general overarching theme was the concept of European digital treasures, and also the concept of digital content. So in the selection process, there was also the overarching thinking of how these documents would fit then in the type of exhibitions. The exhibitions were not the traditional type of exhibitions where you go in an archives, you see a lot of showcases with the original documents. There were some original documents, but there was a lot of documents that was not in original, simply because the target was, not because we don't have them, we have them, we can exhibit them, but the target was the dissemination through modern means. For example, the augmented reality that we used on a number of documents, such as the Portolan and others, and basically that was taken up into the whole consideration of the project. Yes.
Yeah, perhaps I just want to add that, of course, a point was to cover broad areas of Europe with the sources we exhibited. So from the north to Central Europe, to the south, to the east, to give an overview over the whole of the continent.
Yes. So there was this dimension of countries, of reaching out across Europe. There was also the dimension of diversity of archives. So although the main lead partners were national archives, but we reached out to other typologies of archives. So the whole target was networking, and through that networking, I think this project managed to achieve quite a lot. I wanted to comment also, Carl, maybe you can also elaborate a bit about the films. Sort of with the films, even there was a whole diversity of typology of films, from short films, very short films, cartoon style, to longer films, documentary style. What are the plans for further dissemination? I know there was already an event screening these films.
Yes, there was in Brussels, I think, in January, publication of the films in the buildings of the European Union. Well, they are already uploaded on the project homepage, on the project site. So if you go on the site, digitaltreasures.eu, you can find under the I think they're called results and films, something like this. You can the links to the films. I'm not sure whether there are plans to disseminate it on other platforms. Perhaps you can ask the project lead partners from Spain whether there are some plans to do so. But they would deserve it because they are wonderful works. The animated films of the Camino de Santiago, for instance, was really gives you a lot of smiles during watching these films, and gives you a really an alternative approach to history.
Great. It doesn't seem that we have any further questions. So basically, we can start bringing this lecture to an end. My first word of thanks goes to you, Carl, for that excellent presentation and all the work that you and Icarus and the whole partners in the European Digital Treasures did together. I am sure also that through this networking, the archives sector acquired a new learning experience in participating in European Union funded projects. This is not the first archives project that benefited it. There are others, but this is probably the most wide and concerted effort by a diversity of archival institutions to come together, come with a team, develop a project, and deliver it successfully, notwithstanding the big challenges that the COVID time did put and the stress it did put on the project. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your input. I would like to thank the whole audience that we had with us today. Our plan, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, is that we will meet again for another presentation in mid-July and for a third presentation, a third lecture in September. I do encourage you to reach out to other people who might be interested in this presentation as soon as then we upload the recording of this. And I would like to remind everyone also a bit of news coming from ICA about the commemoration, or about the International Archives Day. So a lot of archives at the moment are preparing to celebrate the International Archives Day through a number of activities. And in particular, it's a special year for the International Council on Archives. We're commemorating the 75th anniversary of this organization. So I do encourage you to come up with activities in your home countries and also to follow and participate in the activities that the International Council on Archives is organizing. The last word of thanks is to Clemence, who is here with us from ICA, and the whole team at ICA for the technical support they gave us for this presentation. Thank you very much.